Putney Theatre Company presents an adaptation of Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. Chapter 1.
Christmas won't be Christmas without any presents.
Oh, it's so dreadful to be poor.
It's not fair for some girls to have plenty of pretty things while we have nothing.
We've got father and mother and each other.
Amy, you know Marmee thinks we shouldn't spend money frivolously when our men are suffering in the army. We can't do much, but we can make our little sacrifices, and ought to do it gladly. But I'm afraid I don't.
I hardly think us spending $1 each would make a difference to the war effort. I agree not to expect any presents from Mother or you, but I do want to buy books for myself.
I plan to spend mine on new music.
I shall get a nice box of Faber's drawing pencils. I really need them.
Marmee didn't actually say anything about our money. Let's each buy what we want and have a little fun. I'm sure we work hard enough to earn it.
I know I do. Teaching those tiresome children nearly all day, when I'm longing to enjoy myself at home.
How would you like to be shut up for hours with Aunt March with all her fussy ways? She's never satisfied, and she will go on until I feel like jumping out of the window.
I don't believe either of you suffer as I do. You don't have to go to school with impertinent girls who label your father if he isn't rich and insult you when your nose isn't nice.
You mean libel, you fool. Honestly, talking about labels as if Papa were a pickle bottle.
Beth put a pair of slippers down to warm. Somehow the sight of the old shoes had a good effect upon the girls, for Mother was coming. Meg stopped lecturing. Amy got out of the easy chair without being asked, and Jo forgot how tired she was as she sat up to hold the slippers nearer to the blaze.
They are quite worn out. Marmee must have a new pair.
I thought I'd get her some with my $1.
No, I shall.
I'm the oldest.
I'm the man of the family now Papa is away, and I shall provide the slippers, for he told me to take special care of Mother while he was gone.
I'll tell you what we'll do. Let's each get her something for Christmas, and not get anything for ourselves.
That's like you, dear. What will we get?
I shall give her a nice pair of gloves.
Army shoes, best to be had.
Some handkerchiefs, all hemmed.
I'll get a little bottle of cologne. She likes it, and it won't cost too much, so I'll have some left to buy my pencils.
Let Marmee think we are getting things for ourselves, and then surprise her. We must go shopping tomorrow afternoon, Meg. There is so much to do about the play for Christmas night.
I don't mean to act any more after this time. I'm getting too old for such things.
You won't stop. You are the best actress we've got, and there will be an end of everything if you quit the boards.
I don't see how you can write and act such splendid things, Jo. You're a regular Shakespeare.
Not quite. I do think The Witch's Curse, an operatic tragedy, is rather a nice thing, but I'd like to try Macbeth. Is that a dagger I see before me?
No, it's a toasting fork with Mother's shoe on it instead of the bread.
I'm home. Has anyone called, Beth? How is your cold, Meg? Jo, you look tired to death. Come and kiss me, baby. I've got a treat for you.
A letter, a letter! 3 cheers for Father.
Yes, a nice long letter. He is well and sends all sorts of loving wishes for Christmas and a special message to you girls.
I think it was so splendid in Father to go as a chaplain when he was too old to be drafted and not strong enough for a soldier.
It must be very disagreeable to sleep in a tent and eat all sorts of bad-tasting things and drink out of a tin mug.
When will he come home, Marmee?
Not for many months, dear. He will stay and do his work faithfully as long as he can, and we won't ask for him back a minute sooner than he can be spared. Now come and hear the letter. Give them all my dear
love and a kiss. Tell them I think of them by day, pray for them by night, and find my best comfort in their affection at all times. A year seems very long to wait before I see them. I know they will remember all I said to them, that they will be loving children to you, will do their duty faithfully, fight their bosom enemies bravely, and become their truest selves so beautifully, that when I come back to them, I may be fonder and prouder than ever of my little women.
I am a selfish girl, but I'll truly try to be better so he mayn't be disappointed in me by and by.
We all will. I think too much of my looks and hate to work, but won't any more, if I can help it.
I'll try and be what he loves to call me, a little woman, and not be rough and wild, but do my duty here instead of wanting to be somewhere else.
We all have our burdens, and the longing for goodness and happiness is the guide that leads us through many troubles to peace. Now, suppose you see how far on that road you can get before Father comes home.
Let us do it. It's only another name for trying to be good.
Joe was the first to wake in the grey dawn of Christmas morning.
Where's Mother, Hannah?
Goodness only knows. Some poor creature came a-begging, and your ma went straight off to see what was needed. There ne'er was such a woman for giving away food and drink, clothes and kindling.
Oh, she will be back soon, I think, so fry your cakes, and we'll get her presents ready.
How nice my handkerchiefs look, don't they? Hannah washed and ironed them for me, and I marked them all myself.
Bless the child. She's gone and put Mother on them instead of M. March. How funny.
Isn't that right? I thought it was better to do it so, because Meg's initials are M.M., and I don't want anyone else to use these but Marmee.
It's a very nice idea. Quite sensible, too, for no one can ever mistake now.
There's Mother. Hide the basket, quick.
Oh, Merry Christmas, Marmee.
Thank you, Marmee.
Thank you for our books.
Merry Christmas. Before we sit down, not far away from here lies a poor woman with a little newborn baby and 6 other children. They are suffering from hunger and cold. My girls, will you give them your breakfast as a Christmas present?
I'm so glad you came before we began.
I shall take the cream and the muffins.
I thought you'd do it. We shall all go, and when we come back we will have bread and milk for breakfast and make it up at dinner time.
The procession set out, wrapped up in hoods and mittens, and arrived at the home of the Hummels. A bitter wind blew through the broken window, and the lack of fire made their one room even bleaker. But it wasn't long before the March family brought more than just breakfast into this home. When they went away, leaving comfort behind, I think there was not in all the city 4 merrier people than the hungry little girls who gave away their breakfasts on Christmas morning. When they returned, Marmee finally received her presents, and she beamed over the gifts, her eyes full of tears as she read the notes that accompanied them.
Dinner is ready.
Oh, my.
What's all this?
Ice cream, pink and white, French bonbons, cake.
Oh, where did all this come from?
Is it fairies?
Santa Claus.
Mother did it.
Aunt March had a good fit and sent the supper.
All wrong. Old Mr. Lawrence sent it. Hannah told one of his servants about your breakfast party. He sent me a polite note this afternoon saying he hoped I would allow him to send them a few trifles in honor of the day.
His grandson put the idea into his head. I know he did. He's a capital fellow, and I wish we could get acquainted. When the cat ran away, he brought her back, and we talked over the fence all about cricket.
I like his manners, and he looks like a little gentleman, so I've no objection to your knowing him if a proper opportunity comes. He brought the flowers himself.
I have never had such a fine bouquet before. Oh, how pretty it is.
I wish I could send my bunch to Father. I'm afraid he isn't having such a Merry Christmas as we are.
A few days after Christmas, the house was quiet, and all the Marches were enjoying being cozy when Meg came running through the house.
Joe, look! A note of invitation from Mrs. Gardner for a dance on New Year's Eve. Marmee is willing we should go. Oh, now what shall we wear?
What's the use of asking that when you know we shall wear our poplins because we haven't got anything else?
If only I had a silk.
I'm sure our pops look like silk. Yours is as good as new, but I forgot the burn and the tear in mine. What shall I do? The burn shows badly, and I can't take any out.
You must sit still all you can and keep your back out of sight. And do behave nicely. Don't put your hands behind you or stare or say Christopher Columbus, will you?
Don't worry about me. I'll be as prim as I can and not get into any scrapes if I can help it. Now go and answer your note and let me finish this splendid story.
On New Year's Eve, the March girls were absorbed in the business of getting ready for the party. There was a great deal of running up and down, laughing and talking, and at one time A strong smell of burned hair pervaded the house.
Are they to smoke like that?
It's the dampness drying.
What a queer smell. It's like burnt feathers.
There. Now I'll take off the papers and you'll see a cloud of little ringlets.
Oh, what have you done? Oh, I'm spoiled. My hair. Oh, my hair.
You shouldn't have asked me to do it. I always spoil everything.
It isn't spoiled. Just frizzle it and tie your ribbon so the ends come on your forehead a bit, and it will look like the latest fashion. I've seen many girls do it so.
After various lesser mishaps, the girls were dressed. Meg in silver and Jo in maroon. Meg's high-heeled slippers were very tight and hurt her, though she would not own it. And Jo's 19 hairpins all seemed stuck straight into her head, which was not exactly comfortable. But dear me, let us be elegant or die.
Have a good time.
I wish I could go. I'd enjoy it so much more than Jo.
Meg was at ease very soon, but Jo stood about, with her back carefully against the wall, and felt as much out of place as a colt in a flower garden. Meg was asked to dance at once, while Jo slipped into a curtained recess, intending to peep and enjoy herself in the piece. Unfortunately, another bashful person had chosen the same refuge, for as the curtain fell behind her, she found herself face to face with the Lawrence boy.
Dear me, I didn't know anyone was here.
Don't mind me. Stay if you like. I only came here because I don't know many people and felt rather strange at first, you know.
So did I.
I think I've had the pleasure of seeing you before. You live near us, don't you?
Next door. We did have such a good time over your nice Christmas present.
Grandpa sent it, Miss March.
But you put it into his head, didn't you now, Mr. Lawrence? But I am not Miss March. I'm only Jo.
Well, I am not Mr. Lawrence. I'm only Laurie.
Laurie Lawrence. What an odd name.
My first name is Theodore, but I don't like it, for the fellows called me Dora, so I made them say Laurie instead.
I hate my name, too. I wish everyone would say Jo instead of Josephine. I suppose you are going to college soon?
Not for a year or two. I won't go before 17 anyway.
You're 15.
16. Next month.
Gosh, you don't look it. I wish I was going to college.
I could do without it. I say, that's a splendid polka. Care to dance, Miss Jo?
I can't, for I told Meg I wouldn't because...
Because what?
Well, I burnt my frock, and though it's nicely mended, it shows, and Meg told me to keep still so no one would see it. You may laugh if you want to. It is funny, I know.
Never mind that. I'll tell you how we can manage. There's a long hall out there, and we can dance grandly, and no one will see us. Please, come.
The hall was empty, and they had a grand time. When the music stopped, they sat down on the stairs to get their breath, and Laurie was in the midst of an account of a students' festival at Heidelberg when Meg appeared in search of her sister.
That stupid high heel turned and I've sprained my ankle. I can hardly stand, and I don't know how I'm ever going to get home.
I'll ask Laurie. He came by carriage and we could hitch a lift.
Jo! Don't say anything. It's nothing. I turned my foot a little, that's all.
I was about to leave. Please, allow me to accompany you home.
Are you sure? It is quite early after all.
I always go early. I do, truly. Please, let me take you home. It's all on my way, and it's raining. I couldn't possibly agree to you walking.
The girls waved goodbye to their new friend from the porch, and quietly as they could limped their way to bed, eager to go over the evening in great detail. But the instant their door creaked, 2 little nightcaps bobbed up, and 2 sleepy but eager voices cried out,
Tell us about the party.
Jo had saved some bonbons from dinner, and while Amy and Beth munched on their midnight treat, the older girls told them about the dancing and how Meg had been invited to spend the weekend with Annie Moffat, and the chivalry of Laurie. but Meg couldn't help but think they had stood out for the wrong reasons against the fine other young ladies that evening.
I don't believe fine young ladies enjoy themselves a bit more than we do, in spite of our burned hair, old gowns, one glove apiece, and tight slippers that sprain our ankles when we are silly enough to wear them.
And I think Joe was quite right. The sparkle of the holidays had worn off, and the March family seemed rather out of sorts on a particularly gloomy and wet day. Beth had a headache and lay on the sofa, trying to comfort herself with the cat and the 3 kittens. Amy was fretting because her lessons were not learned. Jo lost her temper when she had upset an inkstand, broken both boot-lacings, and sat down upon her hat.
Beth, if you don't keep those horrid cats down in the cellar, I'll have them drowned.
Meg, how can you say such an awful thing?
Just because you can't be at a dance every week, you take it out on the poor kittens.
What's 9 times 12?
Girls, do be quiet 1 minute. I must get this off by the early mail, and you drive me distracted.
Where in the world are you going to dressed like that?
Going out for exercise.
I should think 2 long walks this morning would have been enough.
Can't keep still all day. I like adventures, and I'm going to find some.
In the winter, the Marches' house was an old brown house, looking rather bare and shabby, robbed of the vines that in summer covered its walls and the flowers which then surrounded it. On the other side was a stately stone mansion, plainly betokening every sort of comfort and luxury. This was the house of Mr. Lawrence and his grandson, Laurie. Jo had always thought of the house as a kind of enchanted place, full of splendors and delights which no one enjoyed. Since the party, Jo had been more eager than ever to see inside the house, and had planned many ways of making friends with Laurie, but he had not been seen lately. One day she spied a face at an upper window.
How are you? Are you sick?
I've had a bad cold and been shut up a week.
I'm sorry. What do you amuse yourself with?
Nothing. It's dull as tombs up here.
Have someone come and see you then.
Will you come?
I'm no good as a nurse, but I'll come.
And so Jo arrived laden with things to entertain Laurie. Meg had sent cakes, and Beth had insisted that Jo took one of the kittens to comfort him.
I'm here to amuse you. Shall I read aloud?
I'd rather talk.
Oh, I'll talk all day. Beth says I never know when to stop.
Is Beth the rosy one who stays at home a good deal and sometimes goes out with a little basket?
Yes, that's Beth. She's my girl.
The pretty one is Amy, and Meg I've met. I often hear you calling to one another, and when I'm alone up here, I can't help looking over at your house. You always seem to be having such good times.
I just wish instead of looking, you'd come over and see us. Wouldn't your grandpa let you?
I think he would. He's very kind, though he does not look so, and he lets me do what I like, pretty much. Only he's afraid I might be a bother to strangers.
We are not strangers. We are neighbors. But I don't honestly see how you could be bored with a library like the one you have downstairs. I saw it on my way in.
If you like them so much, come down and see it. Grandfather is out, so you needn't be afraid.
I'm not afraid of anything.
As Laurie led Jo downstairs, she stopped to examine whatever struck her fancy. And so, at last, they came to the library, where she clapped her hands and pranced, as she always did when especially delighted.
What luxury! Theodore Lawrence, you ought to be the happiest boy in the world.
A fellow can't live on books.
I could. Mercy me, it's your grandpa.
Well, what if it is? You are not afraid of anything, you know.
Laurie went to see who was at the door, and Jo found herself looking at the portrait of the elderly Mr. Lawrence. She didn't hear the door open behind her, and the old gentleman in person came into the library.
I'm sure now that I shouldn't be afraid of him, for he's got kind eyes, though his mouth is grim, and he looks as if he has a tremendous will of his own. He isn't as handsome as my grandfather, but I like him.
Thank you, ma'am. So, you're not afraid of me, eh?
Not much, sir.
And you don't think me as handsome as your grandfather?
Not quite, sir.
Ha 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 ha! You've got your grandfather's spirit if you haven't his face. He was a fine man, my dear, but what is better, he was a brave and an honest one, and I was proud to be his friend. Now, you think my boy needs cheering up a bit, do you?
Yes, sir. He seems a little lonely. I was just being neighborly.
Well, in the interest of being neighborly, you must join us for tea.
I'd love to. I'm famished.
The old gentleman did not say much as he drank his 4 cups of tea, but he watched the young people, who chatted away like old friends, and the change in his grandson did not escape him. As they stood in the hall saying their goodbyes, Joe saw the grand piano.
Do you play?
Sometimes.
Please do. I want to hear it so I can tell Beth.
So Laurie played and Joe listened. She wished Beth could hear him and praised him till he was quite abashed.
That will do, young lady. Too many sugar plums are not good for him. His music isn't bad, but I hope he will do as well in more important things. My respects to your mother. Good night, Dr. Joe.
Did I say something wrong?
No, it was me. He doesn't like to hear me play.
Why not?
I'll tell you someday. You will come again, I hope.
If you promise to come and see us after you are well. Good night, Laurie.
Good night, Joe. Good night.
When all of the afternoon's adventures had been told, the family felt inclined to go visiting in a body, for each found something very attractive in the big house on the other side of the hedge. And though Beth sighed for the grand piano, no persuasions or enticements could overcome her fear, till, the fact coming to Mr. Lawrence's ear in some mysterious way, he set about mending matters. During one of the brief calls he made, he artfully led the conversation to music.
The boy neglects his music now, and the piano suffers for want of use. Wouldn't some of your girls like to run over and practice on it now and then, just to keep it in tune? Please, tell the young ladies what I say. If they don't care to come, why, never mind.
Oh, sir, they do care. Very, very much.
Ah, are you the musical girl?
I love it dearly. And I'll come if you are quite sure nobody will hear me and be disturbed.
Not a soul, my dear. So come and drum away as much as you like. I shall be obliged to you.
How kind you are, sir.
I had a little girl once, with eyes like these. God bless you, my dear.
Next day, having seen both the old and young gentlemen out of the house, Beth made her way as noiselessly as any mouse to the drawing-room, where her idol stood. Beth straightway forgot her fear and everything else, but the unspeakable delight which the music gave her, for it was like a voice of a beloved friend. She never knew that Mr. Lawrence opened his study door to hear the old-fashioned airs he liked.
Mother, I'm going to work Mr. Lawrence a pair of slippers. He is so kind to me. I must thank him, and I don't know any other way. Can I do it?
Yes, dear. It will please him very much and be a nice way of thanking him.
Beth worked early and late on the slippers, and when they were finished, she wrote a short, simple note, and with Laurie's help, got them smuggled into the old gentleman's study table. No word came from Mr. Lawrence until the next day. Beth had been out running an errand, and on her return, she saw 4 heads popping out of the parlor window. And the moment they saw her, several hands were waved, and several joyful voices screamed.
Here's a letter from the old gentleman. Come quick and read it.
Oh, Beth, he sent you.
Mr. Lawrence has sent you a piano, Beth. Your very own piano.
For me?
Yes, all for you, my precious. Isn't it splendid of him? Here's the key in the letter. We didn't open it, but we are dying to know what he says.
You read it. I can't. Oh, it is too lovely.
Dear madam,
I wish someone would write me so.
I have had many pairs of slippers
in my life, but I never had any that suited me so well as yours. I like to pay my debts, so I know you allow the old gentleman to send you something which once belonged to the little granddaughter he lost. With hearty thanks and best wishes, I remain your grateful friend and humble servant, James Lawrence.
There, Beth. That's an honour to be proud of, I'm sure.
You'll have to go and thank him.
Yes, I mean to. I guess I'll go now before I get frightened thinking about it.
And to the utter amazement of the assembled family, Beth walked deliberately down the garden, through the hedge, and in at the Lawrences' door. They would have been still more amazed if they had seen what Beth did afterward.
Enter.
I came to thank you, sir, for...
But she didn't finish, for he looked so friendly that she forgot her speech and, only remembering that he had lost the little girl he loved, she put both arms round his neck and kissed his cheek. Mr. Lawrence was so touched that all his crotchety ways vanished, and he laid his wrinkled cheek against her rosy one, feeling as if he had got his own little granddaughter back again.
I just wish I had a little money.
Why?
I need it so much. I'm dreadfully in debt.
Oh, in debt, Amy? What do you mean?
Why, I owe at least a dozen pickled limes and I can't pay them.
Limes? Oh, what are you talking about?
All the girls buy them and keep them in their desk. Everyone trades them for pencils, bead rings, paper dolls, or something else at recess. If one girl likes another, she gives her a lime. If she's mad with her, she eats one before her face and doesn't offer even a suck. They treat by turns, and I've had ever so many but haven't returned them. And I ought to, for they're debts of honor, you know.
How much will pay them off and restore your credit?
A quarter would more than do it.
Here's the money. Amy, make it last as long as you can.
Next day, Amy could not resist the temptation of displaying a moist brown paper parcel full of pickled limes before she consigned it to the innermost recesses of her desk.
Have you heard Amy March is giving out limes?
Only to her best friends.
Amy, have I told you about my party? You must come.
Amy, do you want to wear my watch? You can, until recess.
Amy, I know I said some things about your previously limeless state, but now I can see you've really turned it around, and I am so proud to be your friend.
You needn't be so polite all of a sudden, for you won't be getting any.
Mr. Davies, Amy March has pickled limes in her desk.
Miss March, please come to the front of the class and bring with you the limes you have in your desk. Now, take these disgusting things 2 by 2 and throw them out of the window. Now, young ladies, you remember what I said to you a week ago. I am sorry this has happened, but I never allow my rules to be infringed, and I never break my word. Miss March, hold out your hand.
Amy set her teeth, threw back her head defiantly, and bore, without flinching, several tingling blows on her little palm. They were neither many nor heavy, but that made no difference to her. For the first time in her life, she had been struck, and the disgrace in her eyes was as deep as if he had knocked her down. She was in a sad state when she got home, and immediately told her family about her terrible day.
I never want to go back to that place.
You can have a vacation from school, but I want you to study every day with Beth. I don't approve of corporal punishment.
That's good. I wish all the girls would leave and spoil his old school. It's perfectly maddening to think of those lovely limes.
I am not sorry you lost them. You broke the rules and deserve some punishment for disobedience.
Do you mean you are glad I was disgraced before the whole school?
Oh, of course not. But Amy, dear, you are a talented and kind girl, but you are in danger of becoming conceited, and conceit can spoil the finest genius.
Is Laurie conceited?
Oh, not in the least.
I see. It's nice to be talented and elegant, but not to show off.
That's my girl. You needn't go back until your father and I have made a decision about your schooling.
It was the end of winter, and although there was still snow on the ground, the smell of spring was in the air. And with this change in season, some of the Marches began to grow restless.
Where are you going?
Little girls shouldn't ask nosy questions.
Oh, don't be horrid.
Do tell me. I should think you might let me go, too, for Beth is fussing over her piano, and I haven't got anything to do, and I'm so lonely.
I can't, dear, because you aren't invited.
Meg, be quiet or you'll spoil it all. You can't go, Amy, so don't be a baby and whine about it.
You are going somewhere with Laurie. I know you are.
Yes, we are. Now do be still and stop bothering.
I know. You're going to the theatre to see the 7 Castles. And I shall go, for Mother said I might see it, and it was mean not to tell me in time.
Oh, don't fret. Mother says you can go next week with Beth and Hannah, when you are properly over your cold and can enjoy yourself.
I don't like that half as well as going with you and Laurie. I am over the worst of it. Please let me. Do, Meg. I'll be ever so good.
Suppose we take her. I don't believe Mother would mind if we bundle her up well.
It would be very rude to drag Amy along when he only invited us. There wouldn't be enough tickets, would there? I should think she'd hate to poke herself where she isn't wanted.
I shall go. Meg says I may, and if I pay for myself, Laurie hasn't anything to do with it.
You can't sit with us, for our seats are reserved, and you mustn't sit alone, so Laurie will give you his place, and that would spoil the fun. Just go next week.
Come on, you two.
Come on, Meg.
It's just this once, darling.
You'll be sorry for this, Joe March. See if you ain't.
They had a charming time, and as they headed for home, Jo began to think what her sister would do to make her sorry for it. And going up to put away her best hat, Jo's first look was towards the bureau, for in their last quarrel, Amy had soothed her feelings by turning Jo's top drawer upside down on the floor. Everything was in its place. However, Jo decided that Amy had forgiven and forgotten her wrongs. There Jo was mistaken. For next day she made a discovery which produced a tempest. The sisters were sitting together late in the afternoon when Jo burst into the room.
Has anyone taken my book?
No.
Where did you have it last?
Amy, you've got it.
No, I haven't.
That's a fib.
It isn't. I haven't got it, don't know where it is now, and don't care.
You'd better tell it once, or I'll make you.
Scold as much as you like, you'll never see your silly writing again.
Why not?
I burned it up. I told you I'd make you pay for being so cross yesterday, and I have,
You
so...
wicked, wicked girl! I can never write it again, and I'll never forgive you as long as I live.
Jo rushed out of the room up to the old sofa, where she let the hot, furious tears pour down her cheeks. Mrs. March, having heard the story, soon brought Amy to a sense of the wrong she had done her sister. Jo's book was the pride of her heart, and Amy's bonfire had consumed the loving work of several years.
Please forgive me, Jo. I'm very, very sorry.
I never shall forgive you.
Don't let the sun go down upon your anger. Forgive each other, help each other, and begin again tomorrow.
It was an abominable thing, and she doesn't deserve to be forgiven.
The next day was equally frosty in the March household.
Everybody is so hateful. I'll ask Laurie to go skating. He is always kind and jolly and will be nice to me.
Jo is going skating with Laurie this morning.
Of course she is, and she promised I should go next time, for this is the last ice we shall have. It just isn't fair.
Oh, don't say that. You were beastly, and it is hard to forgive the loss of her book. But I think she might do it now. Go after them. Don't say anything till Jo has got good-natured with Laurie. Then take a quiet minute and just kiss her or do some kind thing. And I'm sure she'll be friends again with all her heart.
I'll try.
It was not far to the river, but both were ready before Amy reached them. Jo saw her coming and turned her back. Laurie did not see, for he was carefully skating along the shore, sounding the ice, for a warm spell had preceded the cold snap.
Keep near the shore. It isn't safe in the middle.
No matter whether she heard or not, let her take care of herself.
Jo was just at the turn, and Amy, far behind, struck out toward the smoother ice in the middle of the river. For a moment, Jo stood still with a strange feeling in her heart. Then she resolved to go on, but something held and turned her round, just in time to see Amy throw up her hands and go down with a sudden crash of rotten ice, a splash of water, and a cry that made Joe's heart stand still with fear. She tried to call Laurie, but her voice was gone. She tried to rush forward, but her feet seemed to have no strength in them. For a second, she could only stand motionless, staring with a terror-stricken face the little blue hood above the black water.
Bring a rail or a strong branch. Quick! Joe, now!
Help!
Grab hold of this. We've got you, Amy. You're gonna be all right.
Shivering, dripping, and crying, they got Amy home, and she soon fell asleep, rolled in blankets before a hot fire. During the bustle, Joe had scarcely spoken, but flown about looking pale and wild, her hands cut and bruised by ice and rails. When Amy was comfortably asleep, the house quiet, Mrs. March, sitting by the bed, called Joe to her and began to bind up her hurt hands.
Are you sure she is safe?
Quite safe, dear. She's not hurt and won't even take cold, I think. You were so sensible in covering and getting her home quickly.
Laurie did it all. I only let her go. Mother, if she should die, it would be my fault. It's my dreadful temper. I try to cure it, I think I have, and then it breaks out worse than ever. Oh, Marmee, what should I do?
You think your temper is the worst in the world, but mine used to be just like it.
Yours? Why, you're never angry.
I've been trying to cure it for 40 years and have only succeeded in controlling it. I am angry nearly every day of my life, Joe. I still hope to learn not to feel it, though it may take me another 40 years to do so.
What troubles me is that sharp words fly out before I know what I'm about, and the more I say, the worse I get, till it's a pleasure to hurt people's feelings and say dreadful things.
You and your sisters helped me. A startled or surprised look from one of you when I spoke sharply rebuked me more than any words could have done. The love, respect, and confidence of my children was the sweetest reward I could receive.
If I'm ever half as good as you, I shall be satisfied.
I hope you will be a great deal better. You show so much promise and talent and bravery to surpass me in all aspects, my love.
True to Mrs. March's word, Amy was right as rain before the next evening, with barely a bruise on her. Joe couldn't apologize enough, and Amy, rather out of character, was very gracious, telling her sister that there was nothing to apologize for. And so, as quickly as the household had been broken, it was fixed, and life in the brown brick house continued. As the trees blossomed and the snow melted away, Meg found herself involved in a whole new season of social engagements.
So good of Annie Moffat not to forget her promise to invite you, Meg. Just think, a whole fortnight of fun. It'll be splendid.
And such lovely weather. I'm so glad of that.
I wish I was going to have a fine time and wear all these nice things.
I wish you were all going, but as you can't, I shall keep my adventures to tell you when I come back.
What did Mother give you out of the treasure box?
A pair of silk stockings, that pretty card fan, and a lovely blue sash.
I wish I hadn't smashed my coral bracelet, for you might have had it.
Now, let me see. There's my new grey walking suit. Just curl up the feather in the hat, Beth. Then my poplin for Sunday, and the small party. Oh, it looks heavy for spring, doesn't it? Oh, dear.
Never mind. You've got the tarlatan for the big party, and you always look like an angel in white.
I didn't like to say anything, but I was sadly disappointed in my umbrella. I told Mother black with a white handle, but she forgot and bought a green one with a yellowish handle.
Change it.
Oh, don't be so silly. It would hurt Marmee's feelings when she took so much pains to get my things. I wonder if I shall ever be happy enough to have all the nice things I want.
You said the other day that you'd be perfectly happy if you could only go to Annie Moffat's.
And so I did. Well, I am happy, and I won't fret. But it does seem as if the more one gets, the more one wants, doesn't it?
The next day was fine, and Meg departed in style for a fortnight of novelty and pleasure. Mrs. March had consented to the visit rather reluctantly, fearing that her eldest daughter would come back more discontented than she went. The Moffats were very fashionable, and Meg was rather daunted at first by the splendor of the house and the elegance of its occupants. The whole Moffat family took a great fancy to Meg, or Daisy, as they took to calling her. When the evening for the small party came, Meg found that the poplin wouldn't do at all, for the girls were putting on thin dresses and making themselves very fine indeed. So out came the tarletan, looking older, limper, and shabbier than ever, besides Sally's crisp new one. Meg saw the girls glance at it and then at one another, and her cheeks began to burn, for with all her greatness she was very proud. No one said a word about it, but Sally offered to dress her hair and Annie to tie her sash. But in their kindness, Meg saw only pity for her poverty, and her heart felt very heavy as she stood by herself while the others laughed, chattered, flew about like gauzy butterflies. The hard, bitter feeling was getting pretty bad when the maid brought in a box of flowers.
"They are for Miss March," the man said. "And here's a note."
What fun! Who are they from?
Didn't know you had a lover.
The note is from Mother and the flowers from Laurie.
Oh, indeed.
Meg slipped the note into her pocket as a sort of talisman against envy, vanity, and false pride, for the few loving words had done her good. She quickly made up the flowers into dainty bouquets for her friends. Somehow the kind act finished her despondency, and she fastened the roses in the dress that didn't strike her as so very shabby now. She enjoyed herself very much that evening, for she danced to her heart's content, till she overheard a bit of conversation which disturbed her extremely.
How old is he?
16 or 17, I should say.
It would be a grand thing for one of those girls, wouldn't it? Sally says they're very intimate now, and the old man quite dotes on them.
Mrs. March has made her plans, I dare say, and will play her cards well. The girl evidently doesn't think of it yet.
She told that fib about the note from her mummer as if she did know, then blushed when the flowers came. She'd be so nice if she just dressed better. Do you think she'd be offended if we offered to lend her a dress for Thursday?
She's proud, but I don't believe she'd mind, for that dowdy tarletan is all she has got. She may tear it tonight, and that will be a good excuse for offering a decent one.
Meg was proud, and her pride was useful just then, for it helped her hide her mortification of what she had just heard. She tried to forget her friend's gossip, but could not. Those foolish, yet well-meant words had opened a new world to Meg. Her innocent friendship with Laurie was spoiled by the silly speeches she had overheard. Her faith in her mother was a little shaken by the worldly plans attributed to her by Mrs. Moffat. The next day, when all the girls were working on their embroidery, the Moffat sisters confided in Meg their plan for Thursday's party.
Daisy, dear, I've sent an invitation to your friend, Mr. Lawrence, for Thursday. We should like to know him, and it's only a proper compliment to you.
Oh, you are very kind, but I'm afraid he won't come.
Why not, Cherie?
He's too old.
My child, what do you mean?
Nearly 70, I believe.
You sly creature. Of course we meant the young man.
It's very nice of him to send you flowers, isn't it?
Yes, he often does to all of us. My mother and Mr. Lawrence are friends, you know, so it's quite natural that we children should play together.
What shall you wear on Thursday?
The dress I wore last night.
Why don't you send home for another?
I haven't got any other.
Only that? How funny.
Not at all. Where is the use in having a lot of dresses? There's no need of sending home Daisy. I've got a sweet blue silk which I've outgrown. You must wear it.
You are very kind, but I don't mind my old dress.
Do let me dress you up in style. You'd be a regular little beauty with a touch here and there. I shan't let anyone see you till you are done, and then we'll burst upon them like Cinderella and her godmother going to the ball.
Meg couldn't refuse. So on Thursday evening, Belle shut herself up with her maid, and between them, They turned Meg into a fine lady. They laced her into a sky blue dress, which was so tight she could hardly breathe, and so low in the neck that modest Meg blushed at herself in the mirror. Miss Bell surveyed her with the satisfaction of a little girl with a newly dressed doll.
Daisy is très jolie, is she not?
You don't look a bit like yourself, but you are very nice. I'm nowhere beside you, for Belle has heaps of taste. Be sure you don't trip.
Meg very soon discovered that there is a charm about fine clothes which attracts a certain class of people and secures their respect. Though the tight dress gave her a side ache, and the train kept getting under her feet, Meg flirted with her fan and laughed at the feeble jokes of the young gentleman who tried to be witty. Suddenly she stopped laughing and looked confused, for just opposite she saw Laurie.
Oh, I'm glad you came. I was afraid you wouldn't.
Joe wanted me to come and tell her how you looked, so I did.
What shall you tell her?
I shall say I didn't know you, for you look so grown up and unlike yourself. I'm quite afraid of you.
How absurd of you! The girls dress me up for fun and I rather like it. Well, don't you like me so?
No, I don't.
Why not?
They're making a fool of you, Meg.
You are the rudest boy I ever saw.
Please, forgive my rudeness, and come and dance with me.
Aren't you afraid you'll look foolish?
Not a bit of it. I'm dying to do it. Come, I'll be good. I don't like your gown, but I do think you are just splendid.
Laurie, I want you to do me a favor, will you?
Of course.
Please don't tell them at home about my dress tonight.
Why do you do it if you don't want them to know?
I shall tell them, but I'd rather do it myself. Just say I looked pretty well and was having a good time.
I'll say the first with all my heart. But how about the other? You don't look as if you're having a good time, are you?
No, not just now, but I suppose I should get my fun while I can. Ned Moffat put his name down for 3 dances, and I suppose he'll want them.
You'll have a splitting headache tomorrow if you drink too much champagne. I wouldn't, Meg.
I'm not Meg tonight. I'm a doll who does all sorts of crazy things. Tomorrow I shall put away my fuss and feathers and be desperately good again.
Wish tomorrow was here, then.
Meg danced and flirted, chattered and giggled as the other girls did. She went to bed feeling as if she had been to a masquerade and hadn't enjoyed herself as much as she expected. She was sick all the next day, and on Saturday went home quite used up with her fortnight's fun and feeling that she had sat in the lap of luxury long enough.
It does seem pleasant to not have company manners on all the time. Home is a nice place, though it isn't splendid.
I am glad to hear you say so. I was afraid home would seem dull and poor to you after your fine quarters.
Marmee, I want to fess.
What is it, dear?
Shall I go away?
Of course not. Don't I always tell you everything? I want you to know all the dreadful things I did at the Moffats.
We are prepared.
I told you they dressed me up, but I didn't tell you that they powdered and squeezed and frizzled and made me look like a fashion plate. Oh, I knew it was silly, but they flattered me and said I was a beauty and quantities of nonsense, so I let them make a fool of me.
Is that all?
No. I drank champagne and romped and tried to flirt and was altogether abominable.
There is something more, I think.
It's very silly, but there was gossip that you are setting me up to marry Laurie so that we needn't be poor anymore.
Well, if that isn't the greatest rubbish I ever heard. Why didn't you pop out and tell them so on the spot?
I couldn't. It was so embarrassing for me. I couldn't help hearing it first, but then I was so angry and ashamed.
Just wait till I see Annie Moffat, and I'll show you how to settle such ridiculous stuff. Laurie's gonna laugh when I tell him what those silly things say about us poor children.
If you tell Laurie, I'll never forgive you.
Never repeat that foolish gossip. I am more sorry than I can express for letting you visit that house.
Don't be sorry. I'll forget all the bad and remember only the good, for I did enjoy a great deal, and thank you very much for letting me go. I know I'm silly, but it is nice to be praised and admired, and I can't help saying I like it.
That is quite harmless if the liking does not become a passion.
Mother, do you have plans, as Mrs. Moffat said?
Of course, I have a great many, but mine differ somewhat from Mrs. Moffat's, I suspect. I want my daughters to be admired, loved, and respected, to have a happy youth, and to lead useful, pleasant lives with as little care and sorrow to try them as God sees fit to send. My dear girls, I am ambitious for you, but not to have you marry rich men merely because they are rich, or have splendid houses which are not homes because love is wanting. I'd rather see you poor men's wives if you are happy, beloved, contented, than queens on thrones without self-respect and peace.
Poor girls don't stand any chance, Beller says, unless they put themselves forward.
Then we'll be old maids.
Better be happy old maids than unhappy wives. Don't be troubled, Meg. Leave these things to time. Make this home happy, so that you will be happy in your own home if offered to you, and content here if they are not. One thing remember, my girls. Both your father and I hope and trust that our daughters, whether married or single, will be the pride and comfort of our lives.
We will, Marmee.
We will.
Chapter 1 of Little Women was adapted and directed by Zoe Thomas Webb, edited by Jonathan Grant, with music composed by Dominic Pollard and Scott Killick. For this chapter, the cast included Kirsty Harrison as Jo, Paula Mount as Meg, Alex O'Donnell as Amy, Lexi Milligan as Beth, Sarah Perkins as Marmee, Tom Thornton as Mr. March, Sarah Kitchen as Hannah, Wilf Walsworth as Laurie, Nick Mouton as Mr. Lawrence, Tom Osborne as Mr. Davies, Lizzie Iredale as Jenny Snow and Sally Gardner, Josie Murphy Harding as Katie and Belle Moffat, Allie Standen as Mary, Ellie Meacham as Annie Moffat, Edith Webb as Mrs. Moffat, and Catherine Goddard as Louisa.